we come to the digestive system chapter. So this is section 16.2 in your Concepts of Biology book. So we're going to talk about the process of digestion, the function of digestion and absorption, and we're going to look at the different organs involved in digestion. To recall from chapter 1, we have characteristics of life, we have metabolism and homeostasis. Metabolism is all chemical reactions happening in the body and the organism. So we have a building of molecules and we have a breaking down of molecules. The sum of all those chemical reactions is metabolism. It's how energy is being utilized. Homeostasis is maintaining a steady state environment. So that is also necessary to understand, and we will see how the digestive system chapter allows for these processes to continue. Chapter 2, we looked at carbon and its importance, its location in the periodic table. It has 4 electrons in its valence shell, so it could form covalent bonds with 4 different partners. It's the building block of many molecules. If it's carbon-based, and we call it organic. And according to how organisms are attaining their food, their energy, their nutrients, we categorize them. And these food categories are called trophs, to nourish. So autotrophs, auto means self, autotrophs are able to make their own food molecule. And this is an example of plants. Plants are able to make their own sugar molecule, glucose, versus heterotrophs, hetero, different. So heterotrophs are attain their food by the means of eating other organisms. So we're heterotrophic. If you saw my introductory video, you'll be familiarized with my chickens. Here we have Buffy, and the other chickens are right behind me. And the chickens are known as omnivores. Omnivores means that they eat both animals and plants. In the case of my chickens, they like their mealworms and they like to forage and eat plant life. So they're right now they're eating broccoli and the kale that I grow and so forth. So they're known as omnivores. They regularly eat both animals and plants. So are we, right? Or at least I am. Some of you might just be herbivores. So that means you mainly eat plants. You're vegetarian. Carnivores, of course, means that mainly eat animals. And so we categorize organisms according to their diet. So how does the digestive system work? How does it interact with other organ systems? How is it playing a role in maintaining homeostasis? We have here a cartoon drawing of the different organ systems in the body. So we have the respiratory system, we have the urinary system, and we have digestive system, which is the subject of today's lecture. So we have let's start with the respiratory system. We know we need oxygen. We know when we inhale, we take in oxygen. When we exhale, we release carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a metabolic waste product. Then we have in the center here the cardiovascular system, because it's a transport system. Now, here with the nutrients, we have the digestive system, and nutrients are going to be broken down into molecules the body could absorb, and then they go into the cardiovascular system. So that's the black arrow, cardiovascular system. So that's the nutrient system now being transported by the cardiovascular system, and then we have those nutrients going into tissue cells. Now, the oxygen from the respiratory system in red line goes into tissue cells because oxygen is necessary for aerobic cellular respiration. And then we have metabolic waste products like carbon dioxide, blue arrow, that need to be exhaled, taken out. Now, we look at the cardiovascular system. We have the blood vessels are transporting, and we have the green arrow tissue cells. We have metabolic waste products that are exiting, being transported by the blood system, and then exiting waste products via the urinary system and the digestive system as well. There are 4 processes to digestion. We have ingestion, digestion, absorption, and elimination. So ingestion is eating. It's another word for eating. And so we eat, and the food that we eat needs to be broken down into molecules that the body can absorb. So the breaking down of molecules small enough that the body can absorb is called digestion.
So we have here a cheese protein, a polymer of amino acids. And again, when we eat, we're eating these proteins in that tertiary quaternary stage of conformation, so that folded stage. And so it needs to be broken down to its basic components, peptides, small chains of amino acids, or just amino acids. So we have the chain of amino acids, and it's going to be broken down by the digestive system. They're going to be absorbed along the lining of the digestive system, starting with the small intestines and a little bit in the large intestines. And so they go through epithelial cells, cells lining the GI tract, and then these components, these amino acids, now become the building blocks for construction of synthesis of human proteins, proteins that are needed in the cell. These could be proteins that are needed in the cell membrane. It could be proteins that are needed uh, to transport other molecules. So proteins have a wide variety of uses and function. So here's where we see the protein from what we eat to formation of a protein the human body needs and will produce. So the GI tract is composed of the alimentary canal. We also call it the digestive tract. And so this includes the mouth, that's where we start, the oral cavity. Then we go down to the throat, we call the throat the pharynx. From the pharynx, it goes into the esophagus, this long muscular tube, into the stomach. From the stomach, it goes into the intestines. This is all the intestines. We'll go down to the different parts of the intestines later on. And then from the small intestines, we go into the large intestines. So that's the digestive system, the GI tract, or the alimentary canal. It is one continuous tube from mouth to anus. The inside of the digestive tube is considered outside environment. So one of your posts was about the bacteria that live inside of us and how come it's not harmful, but some bacteria is harmful. Well, this is considered external environment, outside. And there are protective layers that the body has as part of the immune system to protect and keep the bacteria, protect the body and keep the bacteria in place. So that's the digestive system. But you've probably heard the liver, the pancreas are part of the digestive system. These are known as secondary digestive organs. So secondary digestive organs include the teeth, which is not depicted here, salivary glands. You have 3 salivary glands, 2 underneath your tongue, and then, actually I should say 4, and then 2 at the side of your cheek. So that's right there, salivary gland. And then we have liver, the gallbladder, which is attached to the liver, and the pancreas are all known as secondary digestive organs. I've broken down the steps in digestion into 7 steps, so I'll go over the main steps of digestion, and I'm not going over every slide in the PowerPoint, but I'm going over the whole process of digestive system in this video. So we have digestion begins in the mouth. Okay, so in the mouth, we have the oral cavity, and in different parts of the GI tract, you're going to have mechanical and chemical breakdown or digestion. So in the mouth, we have mechanical digestion by the use of the secondary organs of the teeth. So we have the teeth that are mechanically breaking down food into smaller particles. We also have the action of the muscles of the cheeks. The tongue is a muscular organ that's manipulating the food and helping with moving it. So the saliva, which is mostly water, could also help in dissolving the food matter that we have ingested. So that's mechanical digestion, the manipulation of muscle and the teeth on the food. Then we have chemical digestion. The salivary glands, recall there's 6 of them, 3 pairs. They are releasing saliva, which is mostly water, 99.5% water, and then the rest is some components that help with digestion. So in saliva, we have salivary amylase. Amylase is an enzyme, that's a protein that helps with chemical reactions. In the case of amylase, it helps break down amylose. Amylose is another word for starch. So that's an example of chemical digestion. We also have lysozyme secreted in saliva. Lysozyme is another enzyme, and this is going to be an enzyme that destroys organisms. So it's going to destroy any pathogens, organisms that cause disease. From there, we have digestion proceeds to the pharynx. The pharynx is another word for your throat. And so this is through muscular action. The tongue pushes the bolus, now the food's called bolus, to the back of the throat, and then you swallow, and then it moves down the pharynx. That's all actions of pharyngeal muscles. From the pharynx, it goes into the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube located behind your trachea. Your windpipe's called your trachea, you could feel it, and then behind it is your esophagus. Your esophagus, again, is a muscular hollow tube that allows for that bolus to move through the esophagus into the stomach through an action called peristaltic contractions, peristalsis. It's like pushing the toothpaste out of a toothpaste container where you squeeze from the bottom, then you squeeze to the top all the way to make it to the end. So that's peristaltic contractions. That bolus, partially digested food matter, goes into the stomach. And then in the stomach, you're going to have a continuation of mechanical and chemical digestion. Once the mechanical and the chemical digestion begins in the stomach and continues onto the small intestines, we call that digested matter chyme. So then we go to the small intestine. So let's talk a little bit about the stomach. We now come to the stomach. So the stomach helps with mechanical and chemical digestion. We look at the anatomy of the stomach. Here's the esophagus at the top portion has been cut off. We have the expanded end called the fundus, and then it goes down to the pyloric region. And it's made up of three muscular walls. The inner lining of the stomach are epithelial cells. So the whole GI tract is lined by epithelial cells. These are specialized cells that allow for absorption. And secretion. In this case, for the stomach, there's secretion of hydrochloric acid, hormones, and digestive enzymes. So the stomach is lined up by is folded up, and these folds are called gastric folds, allows for an increased surface area. As the stomach fills up, these folds will disappear, and so that stomach has the ability to expand. Not only is there chemical, mechanical digestion occurring in the stomach, but the stomach is also acting as a storage unit. So we zoom in into these gastric folds, and in these gastric folds, the top surface cells are cells secreting mucus that's going to coat the stomach lining. Recall that the stomach has a low pH of 1.5 to 2, and so that's very acidic. These top cells here, epithelial cells, are going to be secreting a mucus coating that will protect the lining of the stomach, and the indentations are called gastric pits, and in these gastric pits we have gastric glands. So the gastric glands has a series of different cells that are secreting different substances that aid in digestion, such as hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid acts on enzymes, particularly pepsinogen, which is the inactive form of pepsin, to activate pepsin. So hydrochloric acid secreted, hydrogen ions are secreted, then chlorine atoms are secreted. They come together and form hydrochloric acid in the stomach. The low pH will begin the breakdown of protein. So breakdown protein digestion begins in the stomach. And then it acts on pepsinogen, that inactive form of pepsin. Now pepsin is a hydrolytic enzyme which will continue to act on proteins to break them down into peptides or smaller amino acid chains. Other substances are secreted when these gastric glands are hormones that aid in digestion and other additional enzymes that are going to aid in digestion. So that's the role of the stomach. There's the muscular action is going to produce that mechanical digestion. The hydrochloric acid, pepsin, that enzyme are going to aid in chemical digestion. It's an expanded pouch, so it acts as a storage unit as well. And so once there's breakdown of the bolus in the stomach, it is now going to go into the small intestines. The first part of the small intestines is called the duodenum or duodenum, however you want to say it. So this first part of small intestine, the duodenum, continues digestion, chemical digestion. And so by the time it gets to small intestines, this digestive matter is called chyme. The chyme now enters the first part of the small intestines, the duodenum. There's going to be an additional chemical digestion in this segment of the small intestine, and this is where we have the role of the secondary accessory organs come into play. We have the liver. The liver has many functions, over 500 known functions, and in digestion, it is producing a substance called bile. So the hepatocytes, the cells of the liver, are producing a substance called bile. Bile will help in the digestion of fats. So bile secreted by the hepatocytes, the liver cells, it goes into directly into the small intestines, the duodenum, if it's needed, or if it's not needed, it'll go into the gallbladder. The gallbladder functions to store bile and concentrate bile. It'll concentrate by removing water. So if you eat a high fatty food item, then bile will be secreted by the gallbladder and it'll enter into the first part of the small intestines, the duodenum. That's the role of the liver and gallbladder. The pancreas has a major role in digestion. The pancreas is a unique organ in that it has exocrine function and endocrine function. Endocrine function refers to its release of hormones, production and release of hormones. Exocrine function refers to its role in digestion. So pancreatic juice is secreted into the small intestines. This pancreatic juice includes buffers to neutralize the chyme. Recall that the chyme here coming from the stomach is going to have a low pH. Once it enters the small intestines, it needs to be neutralized, brought up to a neutral pH. So the pancreatic juice will include buffer to increase the pH of chyme. It also includes digestive enzymes. So all sorts of digestive enzymes. There's pancreatic amylase. Amylase again breaks down amylose. So amylase breaks down sugars. There's proteinases, so enzymes that are breaking down proteins. There are lipases, enzymes that are breaking down lipids. So intestinal enzymes are going to be secreted by found in this pancreatic juice, and it's going to go into the small intestines. There will be a continuation of digestion, chemical digestion in the duodenum. And additionally, the lining of the duodenum have cells that are also that also have digestive enzymes aiding in chemical digestion. The small intestines are made up of three segments. We have the duodenum, which we just discussed its role in digestion. Then that's followed by jejunum, where most digestion and nutrient absorption takes place. And then lastly, we have the ileum, which there's a continuation of absorption of nutrients. From the small intestines, food goes into the large intestines, into the ascending colon of the large intestines, the transverse colon, descending colon, the sigmoid, and rectum, and out the anus. So let's look inside the small intestines to see how absorption takes place. Looking at the anatomy of the small intestines, we see that there are two layers of smooth muscle. The whole GI tract is lined by smooth muscle, and this allows peristaltic contractions to move digestive matter through the lumen, the hollow end of the tube, through the whole GI tract. So in the intestines, we see the lining made up of absorptive cells or epithelial cells, and these cells are folded up into these folds, intestinal wall folds. And if we zoom into these folds, we see we have additional folds called villi, plural villi. One of these is called a villus. So if all these villi are lined by these cells called epithelial cells or epithelial absorptive cells. If we zoom in on these epithelial cells, we see each individual cell also has mini folds, or we call them microvilli. So again, all of these folds are for maximum nutrient absorption. It increases surface area. So these microvilli here are nutrient absorption. All right, going back to the villi, we see that in the center of the villi, we have a lymphatic vessel. This one's called a lacteal lymphatic vessel, and it is surrounded by capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest of blood vessels. It is they are the ones that are involved with nutrient exchange, dropping off oxygen, picking up carbon dioxide. In the case of the small intestines, they're doing that in addition to picking up nutrients. So when you see blue, it means it's a vein. It's gonna the contents will go into the venous system. When you see red, the contents will go into the arterial system, or I should say the contents are coming from the arterial system. So red. And then red also denotes that it's oxygen-rich blood, and blue, oxygen-poor blood. So we see that there's an exchange of gases here. Oxygen's being dropped off, carbon dioxide is being picked up, in addition to nutrients being absorbed into the venous system. So we zoom in to this villus, and we see that nutrient absorption takes place by going through the epithelial absorptive cell, and then it goes into the blood vessel. The cardiovascular system transports nutrients. Now, substances that are too big to be transported in the blood vessels, such as fats, are going to be absorbed into the lymphatic system, or in this case, this structure is called a lacteal. Eventually, it will make it into the venous system. So being that the nutrients are going to the venous system here in blue, they'll make a stop in the liver, the nutrients, and the liver will filter the contents of blood, including determining if nutrients are going to go into circulation or are going to be stored up. That's the function of the small intestines, is nutrient absorption. Small intestines absorbs 80% of the nutrients. Digested aided by accessory organs. As a review, the pancreas secretes enzymes that help with breaking down fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. The gallbladder stores and concentrates bile. Bile helps in the digestion of fats. It actually emulsifies fats, so breaks down fats into smaller fat molecules, so the pancreatic lipases or enzymes that break down lipids could then break down the lipids. Liver has many functions. It receives bloodborne nutrients from the digestive tract. It controls which nutrients will be stored and which will go into circulation. And it produces that bile that aids in fat digestion. And so from small intestines, we move to large intestines. Large intestines, so the seventh step in the digestion. The large intestines acts to hold and compact material left from digestion, turn it into feces. So there's going to be a major absorption of water. It takes lots of water to digest food. That's why it's good to drink plenty of water when you're digesting. Up to 8 liters of water will be utilized in digestion. Now, 90% of this water use will be reabsorbed. It has to be reabsorbed. If there's too much water in the feces matter, fecal matter, and not enough absorption, reabsorption, then you're going to have a condition known as diarrhea. Now, if too much water is absorbed, reabsorbed, then that fecal matter will be quite hard and it'll cause constipation. So we have water returning to general circulation, and we have an additional absorption of vitamins produced by resident bacteria. So resident bacteria in the small intestine includes organisms like E. coli. E. coli produces vitamin K and B vitamins. So E. coli is getting free food and free housing, and in return, some of its metabolic production is our vitamins and vitamins that we need, so they'll be absorbed in small intestines. This is known as a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. Recall that we began the lecture with macromolecules, these biomolecules: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, 3 of which we discussed: carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Now, why are they important? They're important because they're the building blocks of our cells. So they're building blocks of our cells, and the cells are building blocks of our whole organism. So we have carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins are also known as nutrient molecules. Carbohydrates is your body's go-to fuel molecule, fuel energy molecule. So fuel, organic molecules such as glucose. We have the role of the digestive system. We ingest food, The digestive system breaks it down to basic components. For carbohydrates, that would be one glucose molecule. And why is it important for it to be broken down? Because our tissue cells need it. So this is our representative of our tissue cells. We have the glucose that's going to be utilized by the mitochondrion. That's singular for mitochondria. Now, respiratory system, we inhale oxygen. It's carried by red blood cells. That oxygen is needed by our tissue cells for the same process, cellular respiration. So both oxygen and glucose will be utilized by the mitochondria, and the process of cellular respiration will yield ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So this adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is an energy molecule, carrier molecule. It allows and powers other reactions in the cell. So it's energy for cellular work. Now the product of cellular respiration, or the byproduct exhaust, is carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide, again, remember it's a waste metabolic product, so we're going to exhale. It'll be picked up by the cardiovascular system and it'll be exhaled. Glucose was utilized. The energy in the bonds between carbon and hydrogen was transferred to ATP in a process called cellular respiration, which will be a topic for another lecture. But here I want you to see the importance of digestion of macromolecules of oxygen in a very important process in our body called cellular respiration that happens in mitochondria, inside of cells. So our next topic will be learning about the cell, the organelles such as the mitochondria, and their function.